Hi, I'm Cheryl Gallagher. I'm here with Grant Blaisdell, and we're talking Copernic space and the To the Moon project, and discussing what it means to revolutionize and democratize the space economic environment. So, welcome. Nice talking with you today.
Thank you, Cheryl, as always. Nice to see you, and thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. People are interested, but they don't understand what this means and what it's all about. Maybe we can start with something really basic. You talk about tokenizing space assets, and that means just about anything, right?
We're really at the forefront of defining this market in a certain way and standardizing certain things for the market. So for us, we've classified what we call space assets, which in our viewpoint, really until we're doing what we're doing, it's just kind of a term, right? Like an
Right.
actual acquiring and accessing trading, there being a market for space assets is not really a
Mhm.
thing. For us, we segment them into two categories. And later on there will be debate whether what should be counted as a real world space asset. I'm already having this talk with certain,
Right.
financial people. We segregate them into something we call real world space assets. So
Mhm.
these are assets with some sort of tangible ownership utility in the sense of payload space, the actual payloads themselves, satellite imagery and data, intellectual property, right?
Mhm.
So these
Mhm.
are assets that have some sort of function actually in the space economy. Then we have a second category that we call financial space assets. So these are tokenized literal financial assets that represent stakes, rights, etc., for providing liquidity, investing in to a space venture or models that I like a lot, which we're innovating around, which is investing into the assets themselves. So I'm not investing, for example, into shares of a space company. I'm providing them liquidity and investing into their new satellite constellation. And my investment doesn't give me equity. It gives me, for example, a percentage of the revenue share for that particular satellite constellation, that asset that I invested in. So for us, this term space asset is also a matter of creating new space assets by creating new models that work and are specifically tailored for the space economy, which the general, uh, you know, VC kind of investment, the models of the current market don't really fit space very well. So, and space is so young and mature and new that no one's really built what we call the commercial and financial infrastructure for it. So we look at ourselves as building really the foundation of this new space market and then putting the marketplace on top to facilitate the access to and trade and utilization of these assets.
And so, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not exactly like the stock market, but it sounds like it could function in a very similar fashion. It's just that by, for example, buying a percentage of the revenue share of a satellite constellation, for example, it's just a straight purchase in of whatever potential profit might be coming out of that venture.
We
So,
we eventually will be doing straight equity, what people view as
mhm,
stocks, and
mhm,
try to attach the secondary markets. So secondary markets for investments in space is really big. Why? Because
mhm,
if you have the privilege, the access, and you can handle the tickets of investing in space, your liquidity event timeline for your investment is like 20 years, right?
right.
So that's really blocking and limiting how much money
And
and the types of
that's
investors are moving through the space economy. You can check out a company called Denari, for example. What they're doing is they're tokenizing stocks, right? Equity and stocks, like blue chip stocks as well. And you're
mhm.
thinking, well, why do I need that if these stocks are already on the market and things like that? Well, this whole tokenization element really breaks down accessibility, acquisition, kind of economic barriers, and then revolutionizes also the secondary market around these things. So it opens up a whole new kind of liquidity and functionality set, even to
And
things like stocks.
and that goes along with the security and privacy afforded by the blockchain network, like the distributed
Yeah.
records and
I
record-keeping.
say that the internet really revolutionized our access and the interface to access and digest kind of data, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas blockchain to me is kind of the underlying protocol, the infrastructure that gives trust and ownership and value
That's an
to
important
the
distinction.
digital interface, right?
Mhm.
So blockchain's not meant, a lot of people see what's going on in crypto, the speculative stuff, the NFT stuff. And, a lot of that is cool. It's going to stay, it's going to be its own thing. But blockchain really is not meant to be in your face so much. It's more of an infrastructure tech.
It's an infrastructure thing. So it's some
Right.
kind of the underlying, like, there's an underlying structure for how stock trades are done securely. So it's like the security protocol for this Web3 environment. Am I
Well,
understanding
it's
correctly?
for data as well. So I'll give you an example. My previous venture that I founded, CoinFirm, which is one of the largest big data analytics and anti-money laundering platforms for crypto and
Hmm.
blockchain assets. It's implemented in banks and big exchanges, et cetera, et cetera. So what did we revolutionize around that utilizing blockchain? Like the same thing, anti-money laundering in the traditional financial space is tens of times less effective than in the crypto space, which most people don't understand in the first place. But why is that? One of the major reasons is all of this data they're in silos. They're not immutable. And the thing around blockchains is that you have an entire ledger of immutable data that you can pull out and analyze, choose from. So that's that trust, one of the elements of that trust layer behind it. And so we utilize blockchain, we utilize NFTs as a technology, as a vehicle with features, functions, benefits for, in this case, real world space assets, right? We use it as the engine, as the underlying technology. And one of the things that we're going to be working on this year, next year, always a continuous process, is the user experience. And one of those things is kind of removing some of this Web3 friction to where it is the underlying technology. You do have, a wallet technically with ownership of assets, et cetera.
But
But
it's
that's
not
more
quite so difficult to negotiate the system.
right.
Those kinds of things will take place more or less automatically. Kind of like when uh, Web 2 got started. It used to be real
Clunky.
onerous to use. There were a lot of steps and things, but now
Yeah,
just
yeah,
runs
yeah.
really
And it's a
smoothly. The thing,
process. It took the internet
right,
decades to get to that point,
right,
and
it did.
blockchains, about is about 15 years in. I don't count that because that counts from the inception of Bitcoin, which to me is
Right.
has a different element than like programming applications and things like that, which where
Hmm.
the technologies run to now.
Right. Okay. Good. And then when you're talking about speaking of cryptocurrencies, there's a million of them. Um, it- the environment that you're designing will function
Hold
mostly
up.
in.
One second. I'm sorry to interrupt before you go that. It's nothing's 100% good, but part of the revolution is what you just said, is that people are able to independently create verifiable assets that they can create their own marketplace for, secondary markets, generate new models for liquidity, commercialization, et cetera. That's already a revolution. Bitcoin, the idea of Bitcoin itself is a revolution
It's a
that
revolution on its
I
own.
I can send $1 billion, whatever value, it could be IP, let your mind run to the other end of the world. And I don't need any intermediary. I have a technological trust layer, to confirm all that and do all that. And that's never been done before in history. And even that simple concept by itself is revolutionary. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought it was
No, and
important
are you
to say
finding that
that.
you have good acceptance by the current system? Because they're usually pretty resistant to change. So how are you finding uh, meshing of the new technology and the old way of doing things with regard to acceptance in the broader market?
It's I've been doing startups pretty, my whole adult life.
Hmm.
Um, it's listen, to be honest, sometimes it's not fun. Okay.
Yeah, I
But
know
uh,
it's complicated and a little bit fraught, and there's a lot to be careful of at the very beginning, right? It's a little bit Wild Westy at first.
well, it's more so, and the reason I bring up the startup, the kind of entrepreneur thing, is that you have to build a tolerance for people not understanding, for people rejecting you, running into walls over and over and over again. But the opportunity in this, and what, our users, and various types of users on our platform, you among them,
Mhm.
um, is really we're defining and building even the communication. What are the words to be used to be able to bring
Exactly.
people into understanding of these things and understanding the value and getting into it? I try to inspire our community and our users. We do like multiple weekly things with our community online. Um, to think in that, like, hey, I'm, one guy here. I am creating a lot of these definitions along with my co-founder, Lady Rocket, but you guys are creating this with us. You guys are our users, so
What
let's
do we
build this
need?
together, because that's the really beautiful, unique thing about space, and why it's a massive opportunity, and why we took on this massive challenge is, for us, like, we understood who's going to create the commercial and financial infrastructure in the marketplace for space is going to be one of the largest, most important opportunities, and how that system is created,
Hmm.
right, is the other thing. And space is such a unique opportunity because no one's created that, and that's why it's also a unique opportunity for blockchain. All these new terms and creating new types of assets is, it doesn't have decades really of this commercial, technological, legacy, bureaucracy systems when it comes to the commerce and finance of space. All these other markets for the most part do, and that's why it's really hard to change that from that core, that infrastructure way. And that's why space is a unique opportunity for this technology, while at the same time this technology is the opportunity for this market as its foundation. And communication is key. And I think space
And coming
has
up with a standard vocabulary. You're even having
it's
to start
failed. It's
from that.
failed to
That's the
attract. It's
foundation is
failed
all
to
the way to
attract.
there.
Yeah, it's failed in the communication. But listen, it's smarter people than myself doing crazy things and building out there solutions. And their strength most of the time is not the marketing, the inspiration, the sales, right?
Right,
And that's reason why a platform, a marketplace that facilitates this and builds that structure and that discovery, that communication, that sales point, that transactional moment and point
right.
in the space economy is I think worth a lot by itself.
And providing understandable user interface for whoever might be trying to
Right,
participate in
right.
this revolutionary new economic environment.
Yeah, it's very much a B2B to C model, for
Hmm.
us. So depending on the asset type, it's like, how many general consumers are going to be acquiring satellite imagery licenses? Probably not a lot. That's probably a B2B. But the C comes in even in that case of, okay, well, how does that B apply what they're doing, and how can it benefit the C, their end user? So,
Hmm.
the beautiful thing about space as well is that if you really look at it, it stretches across almost every market, and can end up touching people, literally on the Earth's surface. But it's a big thing for us is building more the commercial side, so the demand side
Hmm.
versus the supply side, right?
Which that's
Because
part of these kind of more informational and educational content helps the public understand what it is that you're doing to be
yeah,
able to
because if
get
I
the process
onboard loads of
started.
space companies, awesome. Maybe the space companies will use it between themselves, but the holy grail is, taking space from being very insular, archaic, and dealing mainly with itself,
Right, along
and
with the
busting it.
associated complicated geopolitics of it all.
Yeah, well, listen, like, to that, what we're building will work for NASA, will work for governments, et cetera. But we understood that, hey, this is going to have to be an infrastructure that we kind of build, reach out and give them to have their own infrastructure, right?
Exactly.
And if
Yeah,
they want to choose to make some asset on the public marketplace, they can bridge that, right? But we also, our thing is not so much to be disruptive. I think that that's a term that Silicon Valley especially kind of created almost as a value, exclusively positive value and virtue. And we're more here to be supplementary and facilitate.
People would be more interested if it was something that they could learn about and participate in themselves, even if it is just, buying simple space assets. And that's part of what you're creating, right? The marketplace for that kind of thing to
Well,
happen. Where would
well,
people get started? How would they learn how to use the system? And how would they be able to participate in what you have on offer here? One thing that I've found working in the space industry is that just about every initiative in it, from the smallest little startup to, the biggest agencies out there, they all require funding. They all require money, and therefore, some of these initiatives being able to create structures that people could invest in them and help them with their funding. Um, isn't that something that is a possible opportunity here with the structure that you're describing?
so on the platform, because you're asking about how can people get involved,
How can
right?
people get involved? Like your
What's
average
what's their
listener who's
entry point?
interested, wants to learn about it and wants to participate. Because I think like the key you said there, like, and who knows if it exists now, but if it doesn't, it's going to be, right?
Well, one
Someone who can find a space initiative that they care about, and they can invest in it in some way through this process.
Okay, so I'm gonna first off,
Helps the space initiative and helps the person.
one thing that like the crypto market has revolutionized that's not going to go away because it's not even related to the technology at all
Hmm.
is really the approach towards marketing, sales, and communication with users, which it built a community driven approach. So really branding, education, all that stuff for the most part has been very boxed in and not
Hmm.
community driven, engagement driven,
Right.
which means day-to-day accessibility, communication, going back and forth, right? Obviously technology has a lot to do with this,
Hmm.
but that's one thing that crypto has totally revolutionized, and is not going away. So one thing people can get started with is just join our community. We keep the main community aspect on Discord, which is another sort of, this is something really revolutionized by gaming. So the mixture of gaming and crypto
Hmm.
have created entirely new digital economies and ways to do things and sell things and communicate. So like we have a Discord community where you can go in there, I communicate there daily, say, hey, this is what we're doing today, this is what's going on, talk to me. You can talk direct, like how many CEOs and founders in any major market, let alone space economy, can you have direct? I might not respond for a couple days, maybe because I'm traveling or whatever's going on, but have that sort of direct communication and interface. So, and this is a place where ideas can be shared. This is a place where solutions can be shared. This is where other community members can share and promote themselves and their work. And through our platform, we enable users to actually get involved in the space economy, which I'll get into in a moment. Okay, so
Hmm.
that's like the basic entry point that by itself is kind of a novel idea for space, right? But since we've been founded, there's been there's other Web3 based space communities that are community driven, right?
Hmm.
Like the projects are community driven.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
so like there's DAOs, which means decentralized autonomous organizations. So that
Right.
means different people have voting rights, etc.
Hmm.
Like so that's happening. When it comes to us, follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, join our Discord, communicate, join our Twitter Spaces, X Spaces, sorry. We have multiple ones a week, right? Where you can
Okay.
talk directly with me and other team members, founders, users, community members, whatever it is. Okay, now to the kind of the bigger thing. So you got the platform. At the end of the day, our platform is going to host 3 marketplaces applications. One that's already been out for a little over a year, is called Spaceables. And this is really our Trojan horse on how to emotionally engage and onboard people onto the platform, into the space economy, without kind of overwhelming them with the seriousness and the element of space. Because No one's really offered space to people before. It's still, there's a little
People
shock.
don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most
They
of the
don't,
time.
they view it as kind of science fiction-y and whatever.
And
So
that's the part that needs to be bridged, is the personal connection to the person. How can it benefit them, or how right now there's still a too, like, as you said, it's a little bit insular, and there's a little bit too much distance between the average person and what we're talking about here.
crypto shares the same issue, and I have something I call Frankenstein syndrome, where I'm a creator, right? And I'm so close to my creation that I don't have that viewpoint understanding, that objectivity of other people. Therefore, the communication comes out very specialized,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So you see that in crypto, it's like crypto talking to crypto, and it's like people don't understand what you're
What you're
saying,
even saying,
right?
or they
But
recognize
that,
that there's words coming out, but
well, it sounds cool, but I mean, it
so,
comes to a point I said earlier where, space has failed in its communication aspect, where it comes to communicating what's the actual value for people on Earth. And the amazing thing about space economy, and why what we're doing we think is so important in the macro, is if you really facilitate and fuel, these entrepreneurs, the solutions, the advancement of the space economy, it's really the most effective at providing tangible benefits on Earth. We experience it every day. We're using it right now as you and I are speaking to each other.
mhm,
When we heavily invested in space in the 60s into the 70s, like there was more technological advancement done in that decade or so than, centuries in other points in
before
history,
that.
right?
Yes.
So there's two ways to engage people. One is you have to emotionally engage them with things that they care about. So we have, initiatives. I think of one called Satellite Rhino, right?
Mhm,
Where our whole thing is we utilize art and initiatives on Spaceables to raise awareness and funds, right?
mhm.
For Saving the Survivors, which is like a premier organization in South Africa protecting endangered rhinos, fighting against poachers, giving them medical care, etc. Right. And we use that to say, hey, well, we're working to build a solution, a satellite imagery and database solution that can revolutionize how they do what they do, and they better protect these animals on Earth. And people then are emotionally tied to that sort of thing. They go, oh, now I get it, right? Now
Yeah.
satellites were abstract to me. Now it means something to me. So there's the tangible kind of benefits like that you can emotionally tie in, and then there's the pure economic ones, right?
Mhm,
So one thing around turning them into actual assets and providing secondary markets to them is, even if they're utility with assets with utility, like real world space assets, somebody might find that of more value, be willing to buy it from you for more value than you bought it before, or even less if you just want to get rid of a portion of it, whatever it is, right? But when you asked about the investments thing,
right.
to us, that's going to be the killer app for us, that really we can more easily bring in millions of
Mhm,
individuals into the
right.
space economy. What we're doing around payloads, etc. I know there's a market there, millions of people, satellite imagery, there's countless companies, organizations, etc. But like something that people just go, oh, I can put $10 into, oh, I like, so here's something, $10, I get a token back. I can trade this and what, like that's going to be the thing. So we hope to be coming out with those sort of first tests second half of this year.
I'll help.
Startup world. So
Let me know. I'll help.
I'm hoping to hit those stars. And thank you. Well, I was
Guinea
going to say
pig.
earlier, I was going to say earlier, where even like when you asked about the education stuff or communication stuff, I'd love to crowdsource our users in our community to just start creating like a community brain trust sort of
Mhm,
thing, right? I think
mhm.
that's a really good idea. And actually, I should write it into the Discord right now and kind of get the initiative going. I think it's, and that's how we build the space economy. The way that it functions now, it works for a certain amount of people and certain things, but it's
Right.
not the model that's going to scale. There's not enough money. The models, VCs don't work very well with space. The government thing, I say it's a shrinking piece of cheese with more rats chasing after it. Uh,
Right.
that other element needs to be built, and space needs to enter into the digital economy because it's one of the few markets that's really last to do that.
Right. And when it comes to people investing, there's always such a focus on short-term gains. Um, the what you
Unfortunately,
were
but
doing. and like venture capital, as you said, venture capital and things, they're looking for how fast they can turn it over for how many percentage, right?
Well,
This is kind
well,
of a different, this kind of revolutionizes even that dynamic a little bit, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, so one thing, it comes back to that 20-year liquidity event timeline. Okay.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
listen, there's a reason why VCs aren't looking to liquidate their thing 20 years from now. It makes total sense. So how do we build a solution to where people can liquidate it faster?
Right. And
That's
that it's
one.
slightly, and that it's worth it for them to do so, right?
Yeah, well, the other side of that is, for example, space economy projections are 2 trillion by 2030, whatever it is, right? Well, those projections are under the consideration that the space economy is going to function the way that it functions now. Okay.
Right.
So my point to that is that space is really hard to invest in for a lot of people because it doesn't really have a streamlined, scalable revenue outlet. That market hasn't been
At this
created, right?
moment.
Right. So we think that's another value of what we're creating. And, once again, we're not here to, I don't view it as disruption. The VC model is the VC model. But,
But it's facilitating that exchange.
yeah, well, I hope VCs will start using, our solution to do that because VCs want faster liquidity as well, right? That's why
Right.
A lot of VCs eventually got into, like when I was raising a fund, I'm doing stuff, I have a blockchain-based thing. VCs
Mhm.
go, well, do you have a token? Why did VCs eventually get into tokens, even though in the beginning they're like, eventually they got in. Why? Because they realized that, oh my God, there's a secondary market here right away
Mhm.
where I can, boop, 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 right? I can get that off. Um, the other thing to the investments aspect. So crypto wasn't funded by VCs, let alone governments. Okay. It was funded by you and I,
Right.
right? So at my
Right.
previous company, we were the first company to be able to analyze Ethereum. So most of these tokens and these what were called ICOs are based on Ethereum. So I got to work with lots of them. Did one myself. That's how that market got funded. And then the VCs came in and et cetera, right? So a
Mhm.
market
Mhm.
independently in itself raised, I think, more money than the space market does as a whole without serious interaction of VCs or institutional investors. Okay. And we
Yeah.
remember what happened with GameStop a few years ago. People got pissed, collectivized, got emotional behind a single thing, and ate a hedge fund in a day. We want to
Right.
facilitate that sort of flow.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh,
Compare,
just go to copernicspace.com and
Yeah,
all the information is
copernicspace.com,
there.
Google Copernic Space, you'll see some articles popping up, especially recently around the moon mission. Earlier this week came out another announcement of a partner client on it. Kudos. It's a distributed cloud
Yeah, I
computing
just reposted
innovator.
that.
Awesome. Yeah. So there's plenty of stuff to find out about us. We try to be, very kind of transparent and unique about how we communicate what we're doing. We do lots of in-person things as well. So, we had the stuff in New York last week with Axiom and Boston Consulting Group. So, follow us at Copernic Space if you're on Twitter. I'm very reachable if you go into our Discord. We have ways, so we've built also like a global reseller network, a verified reseller network through our platform. They're called passport holders.
Mhm.
So you can find some stuff around that or talk to other passport holders. So that's another unique sort of approach that we're bringing
Mhm.
into the space economy is how do we build like an incentivized global network of people who are pushing space commerce and eventually, these other sort of opportunities further. Um, so thanks for asking that. And, we have the moon mission this year. We successfully onboarded and are going to be tokenizing ownership, verification and ownership of around 1,500 assets on the lunar surface. You're a part of that
Mhm.
as well. So this just utilizes a standard that we built over a few years with some space companies on, because really we're looking to standardize, be a horizontal macroeconomic solution, but creating standards for certain asset type verticals, right? So we built standards for what we call physical and digital payload. So How do we sell digital and physical space capacity in objects? And then how do we turn what we're sending up into new verified assets themselves that have their own economic or tangible utility lifeline, so to say. So we utilized our own standards that we built with space companies. And later this year, we're going to be tokenizing and verifying these assets and opening them up on our marketplace if people want to, trade ownership of assets on the lunar surface. And regardless of what the assets are themselves in this case, it's about building the system, the model, the capability for this to be an actual market and for people to participate in it, for there to be standards, so that it's scalable and it's something that
That
can
pretty
stand
much
as a
anybody can
foundation.
use,
Yeah, well, and stand as a
accessible to
foundation for this
everybody.
market for decades to come, and not just kind of be flash in a pan, take advantage of a couple moon missions or something like that, but build a real robust platform and system that works for as many, because it's about empowering these space entrepreneurs as well. So it works well for them, but
Mhm.
also empowers the general public and commercial market.
Well, that's fantastic. I really appreciate your talking with me today, and look forward to everything that's coming up in very short order.
Our
So
pleasure. And remember, it's not just about going up, it's about, hey, we're creating verified assets and ownership of those assets for people, entities to have and utilize how they can utilize them. So
exactly.
going to space is one thing, but what is ownership in space? What is an
What does
asset
that
in
mean?
space?
That's a
Right,
that's a
right.
question for another day.
Well, that's where the tokenization comes in. We'll handle that another time. I thank you for your time
Okay.
once again.
Thank you very much.